So we're here at the Celandine. This is a new condominium property by DMCI Homes. And if you've noticed, a lot of the times that I've been shooting roof deck locations, I've been shooting with DMCI roof decks because they have some of the best views of so many cityscape spots in the Philippines. And today, I wanted to do a very quick video that basically teaches you guys the simplest ways to shoot cityscapes. Now, I'm primarily going to focus on two ways, which is basically one for daytime or sunset and one for nighttime. So as you can see, I have here my A7RIII with a telephoto lens, but let me tell you, you can do this even with a camera and a kit lens. You're probably just gonna have to crop a bit. Why am I saying that? Because the sun is right here and the cityscape is right here, which means that you're not going to have any problems in terms of dynamic range. You're not gonna have any problems with the sky being too bright for your foreground, because as you can see, it's really beautiful. What we have now is actually the sun hitting the cityscape from the side. So it's giving us a lot of layers. Now, the only advantage of the fact that I'm using a 70 to 200 millimeter lens is I am able to zoom in and isolate more patterns than you can with a kit lens. However, you can of course do that as well by cropping, just not too much because you don't want to lose your image quality. Now, as you can see, I'm not even using a tripod for this one. I'm not using any filters. This is a bare lens. And the reason why is because you don't really need to be shooting with long exposure every single time. If a shot is good as it is without long exposure, especially if there's nothing moving to capture with long exposure, then why do it? You're gonna waste time, you're gonna waste exposures, and you might even end up missing the shot. So this is good as it is. All you need to do is really frame everything. Now, one of the most common questions when shooting cityscapes is, what lens do I use? Let me answer that with another simple question. How do you choose which clothes to wear? Of course, you choose the clothes that fit you. In the same way, you choose the lens or the focal length that fits your envisioned shot. So for this one, I'm using a telephoto, and the reason why is because I want to be able to zoom in a bit more than usual. So just to show you, this is 70 millimeters and this is 200 millimeters. Just so you get a feel of the frame and how it would look, of course, with a kit lens. Now, if you're shooting with a kit lens, of course, that would be the 70 millimeter one. And all you really have to do is crop a bit if you're not using a telephoto lens. Now, I'm shooting at 1/160 at ISO 100. I want ISO 100 because I want to minimize noise as much as possible. And I'm at f8 again because I want more layers than less. And right below me actually is the new elevated freeway, the Skyway Stage 3. So I'm also gonna do some shots with that. So the most crucial part of this one is actually getting the right framing and being creative with the framing. You don't have to do long exposure. There aren't any clouds here anyway that are gonna give us any nice textures. So you don't need long exposure. But later on, I'm gonna switch on over to a tripod. I'm gonna use a tripod because I'm gonna do long exposures to also get the light trails down below. And of course, to do long exposures to get the city as bright as I can. Now, I've actually switched on over to a 2470. Why? Because I simply want to show you what this would look like with a kit lens. So a kit lens is actually a standard zoom, just like a 2470. The only difference between that one and this one is, of course, the quality of the glass. Again, even without getting any filters, you can shoot this one. And this is actually wide enough. And the bonus part, of course, is that we're getting these really nice hues that come with the sunset. Now that's at 24. Let me move over to 70 just to show you what you can do. And later on, I'm also going to use this for the night shot. Now, of course, if you're using a crop sensor camera, such as an A6000, A6300, or maybe another brand, then of course your kit lens is probably either a 16 to 50 millimeter or maybe an 18 to 55 millimeter. And when you factor in the crop factor, that's actually still a 2470 or something close to it. So in any given location, there's actually one perfect time to be shooting. And right now, this is it. This is that transition between the sunset before we dip into the blue hour. So why is that? It's simply because in terms of luminosity, the sky and the foreground are balanced. And you can still shoot without having to use a tripod. Let me show you. So I'm at f11, 1/60, ISO 400. And of course, these are the situations where the sensor performance comes into play. Why? Because even if there is relatively balance in terms of the sky and the foreground, you're going to want to bring down some highlights still, at the very least in the sky part, to bring out more texture in the clouds or maybe show a bit more of the distant cityscape. So perhaps the one thing you should be doing when shooting things like these is shoot raw, because you get to take advantage of the dynamic range of your camera and not just what the JPEG gives you. And you know, the most important aspect of shooting like this is being able to anticipate what's gonna happen next. Of course, we're given pretty much this 135, 150 degree view. Of course, there's so much more over here and over there, but I'm gonna focus on this one. And you know that the light is gonna change. Of course, the city is gonna light up. And the mere fact that there's basically a freeway right below where we are, there are gonna be light trails. So the plan is I'm gonna shoot with a tripod later, and I can already see the layouts that I will be doing for later on when it gets dark. So number one, if you want to be doing photography just like this, then you would of course want to be prepared with a tripod. So that's your number one investment. And that's because we're going to want to do some long exposures later on. And let me tell you, if you invest on a good tripod, something that's sturdy, something that will last, you're never going to regret it. Unless, of course, you don't stick to the photography that you're trying to learn. So now you know the most simple and most basic tip, the most basic principle when shooting cityscapes and even landscape photography in general. You want to be there as early as you can, especially in locations like this, because you can get so much out of just one sunset and so much out of one location. And the fact that I was here way before sunset means that I have photos from the daytime, I have photos from the sunset, the blue hour, and even when it gets darker. So now an important feature of your camera that you should be taking advantage of is the built-in timer. Now that timer is not just for selfies, you know. You can make use of that so that that motion of pressing the button doesn't actually shake your camera. So of course it's better if you have a good camera remote trigger, but if not, then the 2-second timer works very well. And that's important because now I'm shooting at f11, 1 second, 2-second timer. Now as it gets darker, that exposure time is going to get longer and longer until you reach 30 seconds, maybe even a minute. And also, while it gets darker, we begin to see the lights coming from the cars. So we're going to want to extend our exposure to actually get those trails. And those are going to be perfect for creating visual paths within your frame. Okay, so I moved to a different spot, not necessarily for the sake of composition, but so I can still be lit up while shooting this video. Now, it is of course darker, and that's why I moved here. But that also means that it's dark enough to shoot during the blue hour. This is the perfect time to be shooting cityscapes, not literally at night, but during that brief transition between the nighttime and the sunset, which is the blue hour. It's blue because the sky is still a dark blue color and it's not blacked out when it's already too dark. So the reason why is because there is still some remnants of sunlight that's hitting the sky, but not enough to overpower the foreground. Now, the reason why I said that for this location, the perfect lens is a telephoto is this shot. Now, the amount of time that you have to be shooting things like these is actually dependent on where you're at. I am in the Philippines, of course, I am very close to the equator, and that also means that the sunset, the movement of the sun during sunset is very fast compared to the northernmost hemisphere, which means that the blue hour I am talking about when it comes to shooting in the Philippines is actually just about 15 to 20 minutes. So the movement of the sun is faster. We have less time for sunset. We have less time for blue hour and the golden hour altogether. Now this is what it looks like when we're shooting at 70 millimeters, which is basically the maximum of a standard zoom lens or a kit lens. So if you shoot with your 18 to 55 or 16 to 50, this is what it would look like. And of course, if you want to zoom in a bit more, you can do a bit of cropping, just not too much so you don't lose too much image quality. Now there's really so much you can do from a location just like this one. Again, I'm shooting from the Legende by DMCI Homes, and the key here is to actually know what you're planning to shoot, because if not, then you're going to get overwhelmed. You're going to try to shoot every single thing you see and you're going to end up panicking and missing out. All right, for my very last shot, I switched over to the 24-70 again because I want to do a wider shot. Still the same settings. We're now at f9, 30 seconds, ISO 100, or perhaps I'm going to boost my ISO just a bit. And I'm going to show you what 24 millimeters looks like for this one. Now this last shot, let's do it at 70 millimeters. A bit of the skyway in the foreground, but still showing the cityscape. Now it's up to you if you want to be strict about your verticals, but I suggest not, since this isn't really an architectural photography shoot. We're really just after the landscape. All right, now just to recap, the important thing is start shooting early. Start shooting way before sunset so you have a lot of time. If you don't need to do long exposure during the day and you don't have a tripod, just keep shooting because you're gonna have enough light. Now when it gets darker, shoot with a good tripod, and of course, shoot long exposures as much as you can. I can go 2 minutes, 5 minutes even if I wanted to, but I just want to show you what you can do with just 30 seconds, and that's basically it. Now if you have any questions, feel free to leave them down below in the comment section. And again, my name is Nicco Valenzuela, shooting again tonight from the Legende by DMCI Homes. And of course, this channel is about landscape photography, cityscape photography, architectural photography, and everything around it, including all the gear and tech. Now, if you're into that, then please subscribe to the channel and maybe even share this video with your friends. And thank you for watching.